This is day 4 of the July-August 7-day retreat 91 in Springwater. Here are some of the questions or comments. What is emotional attachment? Can one really survive as a human being without having at least one person to whom one is emotionally attached? I feel a real contradiction when I'm here at this retreat, rather quiet and peaceful. I can see self-image and it can drop, and I don't get angry as I do living in a big metropolitan city. Driving to work, for instance, when a cab squeezes me to the side, I get very angry. When I'm being taken advantage of by people, it upsets me, and I assert myself. When I feel pressure to do favors at the store where I work, it frustrates and angers me, and so on. How can one be so peaceful here and so irritable and stressed out in one's daily life? Is it really possible to embrace anger or sadness as it happens? After bringing up the question yesterday with you, whether there needs to be intention, willpower to be attentive, and hearing you say that awareness comes on its own, I really see that this is so. There's a very strong feeling and urge in me to observe and end thoughts. I almost feel competitive about this, trying hard to be attentive, to eliminate any thoughts that come up. Now I'm beginning to question this endeavor. Every movement of the mind seems to come down to wanting and fearing. Both movements are completely intertwined with each other. What is the relationship between attention to detail and seeing the whole? Another similar question was, what is the difference between giving attention and open awareness? I didn't write down all the things that came up during a group meeting on anger, and anger as well as fear is one of the most frequently discussed things in meetings. So shall we talk a bit about anger in this talk? Maybe starting with this question, is it possible to embrace anger? A person said something like, you talk about embracing whatever there is. Can anger be embraced? Of course, in theory one can say, yes, of course, everything can be embraced. But is there really an embracing of anger when it happens? And what do we mean by embracing it? Often it is said you have to accept your anger, or you have to control your anger. Repress your anger, or express your anger. What is embracing it? I don't feel that embracing is accepting, because accepting means already someone there who says it's all right, or rejecting means someone there who says it's wrong, it must be controlled. Or someone there saying it must be expressed for my mental health, well-being, getting back to balance. All of that is not this embracing. And it's a difficult word, because you can also say there's an embracer of the anger. And what we're getting at, whether there can be a state of being in which whatever happens does not bring about separation. Either through the thought, I must accept it, or the thought, I must control it, or the thought, I must express it, or the thought, I have this anger, what a shame, or how justified I am to have it. This is righteous anger, which is different from other anger, and this one is justified. All this constant commenting and directing and controlling and suggesting inwardly to ourselves, as from lots of tapes, what we should do or shouldn't do, what we are, that all is separation from what is actually occurring this moment. Can that state of being be come upon, in which what has happened just a moment ago is just felt, listened to, seen, completely as it is or was? Without the 1,000 habitual reactions to it, and then some more new ones, which one may have just picked up by reading a book on anger. I'm not saying what is in the book may not be helpful in one way or another, but we're asking whether there can be a state of being, a state of awareness or attending or listening, which does nothing to what is already there, what has already happened. Noticing reactions that want to come up from the sheer force and power of habit, to control it, to maintain it, to express, reject. All of this is the separation from what has just happened. Through thinking and remembering, all of our habits and reactions are somehow or other coming out of memory of what was earlier, laid down in memory, in the brain, throughout the organism, in the tissue, organs, muscles, and the whole chemical system, chemical information system that operates throughout the body, from brain to organs, and back, and among each other. Organs communicate with each other too, and with the cells. Everything is informing and receiving information chemically and electrically throughout this body. And the brain, as we put it yesterday, may be seen not just as initiator, but coordinator of all of this. And yet this very brain, which is so busy with all the past events stored there, ready to be fired, ready to fire, to trigger, that same brain can also quiet down in listening and looking and attending in what one may call a state of wonder, inquiry. Inquiry doesn't mean a ready question is there, but it is a state of not knowing. And with that, the suspense of all the known reactions, what I should do or shouldn't do, or have always done or should try freshly. Can we put this question to ourselves, whether in the midst of anger having been unleashed, at one point or another, sooner or later, it's easier the sooner it happens. The easiest when it happens before the whole thing is unleashed, when what triggers the anger has been listened to and the reaction is about to come up, to burst forth over vocal cord and into the whole system by raising blood pressure, rising to the head, heart beating stronger, muscles tensing. All of this is observable right at the beginning, from the start, before it has taken over or exploded. But even after the explosion, I don't know whether in the midst of explosion it's possible. I don't know. Because explosion means everything exploded away. Whether it's possible to come upon this instant wondering, what is happening? What is going on? And with this question comes the need, doesn't it, to quiet down. You can't, if you want to listen or see something or discern something or make out what is going on, there's a natural quiet setting in, non-interference. Non-separation through all the known means to combat it. Get rid of it or keep it going. So next time the cab comes closer and closer, or the remark has been made by one's supervisor or husband or wife, or a person one is working with, a snide remark, a deprecating thing, or next time our ways are crossed, we wanted it this way and somebody spoils it. Makes it impossible for us to get what we want. One has to look also, can take some retreat time to look at what are all the things that do make me angry. So one has really looked at them in some calm and quiet. So the next time it happens, maybe now one can see it in action. How is it really working? Why do I get so upset? And all the consequences that come from this anger. Not it's bad, or it's a shame, or it's this or that. What is it? Someone said yesterday in the meeting, At times when I have exploded, it has been very brief, and then explosion and feeling sorry about it, saying, I'm sorry, apologizing, and it has even bonded the two of us at work. Because I was able to say, I'm sorry. And the other person was glad that somebody wasn't, hypocritical, just was straightforward, putting it out, how he felt. And that can happen when it does explode, does get angry. It happens so fast. If the approach isn't seen, if the storm isn't seen approaching, then if there was no attention there, then usually the lightning strikes, the explosion happens, the anger expresses itself in one way or another. So here the question is, how quickly is one done with it, finished with it? Or is there something in us from past recorded, remembered experience that wants to keep this thing going? Because it provides release, some release for the organism, which may be pleasant even, satisfying. Not just organismic release, but psychological release. Having felt put down, putting someone else down. There seems to be an automatic ingrained mechanism in us to pay back with equal coin. And that mechanism is so tough, it doesn't want to be interrupted. It wants to run its course, get its satisfaction. Has one observed that in oneself, or can one observe it when it happens and question it? Not say it's bad, but observe it. Be aware of it, and maybe with that awareness, the thing gets interrupted. And how will one deal with the interruption? Ignore it and go right on because there is a craving for satisfaction, of paying back? Is this addiction in us? Eye for eye, tooth for tooth, we mentioned it yesterday. Hurt for hurt. Anger for anger. And if one observes it, is that inevitably cast in the system? Does it have to run its course? Which means it will run its course again and again and again. It's only when once it doesn't run its course without being repressed meaning denying it, suppressing it, saying it's bad, I shouldn't be like that, then it runs its course in a deviant way, often more hurtful even, because at the moment there is a relaxing of control, it explodes, and maybe at someone else who it wasn't even involved. But only if there is a moment of seeing this whole thing and having seen it and learned about it all along, learning about it right now as we're talking, one can look at this because it happens in everyone's life. By having learned about it, going through it open-eyed and eared and with open feeling, maybe there comes one time when it doesn't have to be consumed, come to consummation. And the satisfaction which loomed so large and the organism craved it isn't needed anymore. Because seeing it, being aware, the energy gathering and looking and listening does not need craved satisfaction. It doesn't crave. It is a different state of being. Not connected with a craving system and a satisfaction system. Psychologically, I mean it. Doesn't mean that there's no need for food or warmth or cooling, protection. if one observes these marvelous animal movies which are taken these days, not in set-up situations, but as natural as possible, there are what one could interpret to be angry encounters among the animals when the territory is invaded, when the sexual mate is threatened to be taken away or lost, when food is taken away, when cubs are threatened, when there is a being backed into a corner. Then the animal strikes out, fights, pushes back. But it all happens relatively quick. The message gets across very fast, and the rivals part or the intruder leaves. The pursuer gives up. The one who's trying to get the food, if it's clear, it will get into trouble, lets the other one have the food. It goes relatively fast. And it doesn't seem that revenge takes place, that this is recorded as something to revenge. Animals don't seem to huddle around discussing it with their relatives or with friends. And this is something to really give a lot of interested attention to if we are interested. How an incident that could come and go quite quickly and be done with, forgotten, out of the world, particularly if one can say, I'm sorry I did this, and the other person doesn't bear a grudge either. How we keep something alive. The brain does. Not only committing to memory, but the memory comes up again, and the stories that are spun out, the speculations about why he did this to me. I know why he does it. He wants to hurt me, or she. She does it all the time. I'm always the victim. Just listen to the stories that you tell yourself about what has happened to you, or what is happening. It needs a sort of subtle wiretapping into this ongoing imagery and commentary that goes on in the mind and the brain about what is going on, what's happening to me. And one can observe in oneself or others how one can accelerate oneself into a real additional high peak of anger and need for revenge just by talking about it to oneself or to others. Bringing it up again, sometimes after 5 years. 10 years, some people bear a grudge for a whole life. Never going to talk to this person again. The need to hurt back. Does it come out of elaboration of what happened to us verbally, image-wise, pictorially? And of course the whole body there with all the remembered hurts and angers. May not even be verbal, but it has a lot of verbalness in it, which one can listen to. And if one really comes upon this and notices it more and more, one doesn't have to go on with the story. And amazingly enough, if the story is cut short, one abstains from any further comment to oneself about this, then the body comes to to balance again. It doesn't need to respond to this constant input, this constant elaboration of what happened, which is usually in loaded terms, like newspaper headlines which want to incite us to take sides, use loaded terms to win us over, and we do this to ourselves and to others, or with others. Once, in studying sociology, one of our assignments was to take a page of a newspaper and underline loaded words that were not factual. And the whole paper was in color. But we do this ourselves, not just the newspaper journalists and editors. And not all of them do it all the time. But try to find out how objectively we report to ourselves what happened. I think we wouldn't have any need for doing this if it was objective, because the objective thing has happened and can be seen and can be finished, the factual thing. So we talked about the embracing of it, the elaboration of it, initially the separation from it by saying, you mustn't be angry, or I am angry, I have a right to be, or, oh, there's so much to watch, isn't there? So much to find out about this thing that haunts all of us, which is anger. Anger at ourselves, at each other, at our situation, at the human race, at the world, at God. And taking the role of the victim, this is something to look at. Feeling victimized, sacrificed, martyred, feeling sorry for oneself. Begin to look at it, and the stuff doesn't hold up. The roles dissolve. They don't hold up if they're really critically looked at. And by critical, I don't mean judgmentally, but discerningly, clearly, not deceiving oneself, inquiring into it, with a mind that wants to find the truth, not continue deception. I'm not so sure that there's a contradiction between feeling some peace here and irritated on the drive to work and on the place of work. For one thing, people who are working here also get angry and irritated. When the retreat is over, maybe during retreat, sometimes someone mentions to me how irritated they got when they received a note about not having done something right. Angry at a neighbor who breathes too loud or chews the celery too noisily. But there's less interrelationship here, less stress. Maybe very little for most people who come. Maybe for staff, which is understaffed right now. There's a lot of preparation for the retreat. A lot of work with people canceling and coming in and changing and so forth. So one may already have come into the retreat stressed out like someone coming from New York City. Stress is stress. just like salt is salt. But in the course of a silent retreat and minimal interaction, some of these constant stimuli are not there. So the organism doesn't have to respond, and therefore can quiet down. And in that quieting down, be aware of the beauty of this earth and sky, trees and the marvelous grasses. In touch with something that is not anger-provoking or out for revenge. It is just there. So many trees broke down this fall, and one can still see them broken, often still in foliage. I wasn't here, but people said it was the eeriest sounds they heard. Tree after tree crashing for hours at a time, maybe days. But the trees weren't angry about it. They just crashed because the load was too heavy. And it's still putting out all of these leaves. It's amazing. Where does the lifeline go? Probably along the very outer edge of the bark, because that's still there. The rest of the branch is fractured. And the leaves of an aspen up on the upper field, the leaves are trembling just as though the whole branch was upright. It doesn't matter. Doing their thing. Without remembrance or trauma. Maybe next year they will be shriveled up and no new leaves. And that will be that. Of course, we're not trees, we're human beings, but we all come from the same, what? Source. Life. Wholeness. Bible says, in the beginning was the Word. I think in the beginning there was no Word. With the Word comes the potential for separation and division. I'm not interpreting the Bible, I'm just taking it literally. Can we be at the beginning, before the Word, for moments at a time? Not be greedy for it, not clutch it when it happens. Not know it, not want it, not be afraid of it. Before the next thought comes up, the quietness of not knowing, and yet open to hear, feel, touch, see. What is there? Inside, outside, what's the difference? There is no difference. It's just all there. One knows not why or how or wherefore or what it really is, but it's there. We will end here for today.